Hey everyone, a very happy new year to all of you and welcome to India's biggest comebacks, episode number 6. Today on the show, we have a very special guest. Arunaraje Patil ji is a writer, editor, and award winning filmmaker and producer. She passed out of FTII with a gold medal in 1969, becoming the first trained woman technician in the industry. Her critically acclaimed feature films include Shak, Gehrai, Sitam, Rihai, Bhairavi, Keh Do Na, and Tum, with many of them having strong women centric themes. Aruna Rajaji has served on many juries, including that of National Film Awards. She's also made national award winning documentaries on the well known classical dancer Malika Sarabhai and Special Children. In fact, she was the first woman president of Indian Documentary Producers Association, among many firsts. Let's welcome Aruna Rajaji to the show. Welcome, ma'am.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Welcome to the show, Arunaji.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Okay, so going towards your comeback story. Arunaraji, you had enrolled initially at Grant Medical College to study medicine, but later you quit that to join FTII. What made you make that shift, especially at a time when it was strongly believed that women and girls from good households never joined films?
That's precisely the reason why I had to do medicine. Because girls from good families, I mean, this was like more than 50 years back, could not think of going into movies. And I was obsessed with movies. As a kid, I saw a lot of movies. My mother was a film buff. And since I couldn't do that, and I was a topper, first class first always. So obviously, the choice was like medicine.
Medicine, right?
So I got into medical college on merit, and then something happened that nobody was expecting to happen. Two subjects in the first year, anatomy and physiology. And I hated the dissection. You know, we actually had to
Ouch.
cut those dead bodies on tables, and I hated that. So I failed in my anatomy, and that was the best thing that happened. So after that, I mean, I appeared again and cleared it and all that. That's different. But the thing is, my mother really then took me out of Grand Medical College and put me in the Film Institute. And people were aghast. They said, Mrs. Patil, what are you doing? You're doing your daughter's brilliant career, because they thought I'll become a great doctor. And she says, no, my daughter's not frivolous. I want her to be happy. And that was my mother, who was very, very special, such a dynamic person. And I owe it to her. What I'm today is like really, what a good start I got going to FTII.
So you were not dissecting bodies anymore, but films.
Yes, that's right. I
Cutting
started
films and
actually
pasting
cutting
films.
films,
Yes,
yes.
awesome. So most of your films have been extremely women-centric. And you've touched upon many sensitive subjects, whether it is repression of sex for women in Rihai, or, talking about trafficking as a subject, or even black magic for that matter. What was your inspiration during the early years of filmmaking?
I think this must have started a long time ago. My father was a freedom fighter.
Yes.
And my mother, we were brought up in a way that was very inclusive and also stood for social change and women's education and so on. So these kind of things actually had a very deep impact on me.
Right.
And I think whatever films we did, even those films which were not about women, had very strong women characters.
Right.
So I would always be like, fighting for them or making sure that they were well represented and that kind of thing.
Awesome. Arunaji, your journey has been a long one and also a very eventful one. The first personal tragedy that you had to deal with was 2 years into your marriage when you were faced with the road accident that, left you with two broken legs and a completely smashed face. How did you cope up with that trauma?
Oh, in the beginning, actually, when I woke up after the surgery and everything was done, I had a mask on my face. And a few days later, the mask was removed, and I looked into the mirror and my nose was gone. And I said, God, why didn't I die? Why did I have to live? Because it was so horrible to do. It was like just terrible. And then I knew I had to do something about it anyway. Much later, I mean, 6 months later, we did plastic surgery and reconstructed the nose. But before that, my legs were broken, and people would be coming and feeling very sorry for me. And I didn't know whether I could walk again, flowers and all these kind of visits, which got me very disturbed. And actually, we were on our way to edit a film in Mysore,
Oh,
Girish
okay.
Karnad and Bibi Karan's film called Vamshruksha.
Right.
And so I said, why don't we just go and do it? And my husband was very enthusiastic also. He said, yeah, why not? And it meant actually living in a wheelchair, editing in a wheelchair, and being in a wheelchair all the time. And he really took such good care of me. And we could actually do that. Edited the whole film in a wheelchair. It was tough,
Wow.
but we actually made it happen. And that film got a national award, it got state awards, and it was wonderful. And in that period, it was so healing
Right.
that I moved on to crutches and then I could walk. And then, of course, I love dancing, so I started dancing again too.
Amazing,
It's
amazing.
possible. I mean,
It
really, anything is possible, I believe.
Wow. That's amazing because I think a lot of people for them even just a simple accident can leave them like traumatized for their entire life and never really recover.
Yeah.
And to be able to actually sit down, and it must have been extremely painful physically as well, to
Yes.
sit down and edit films. And these are not the days where you have a machine which does everything. These are days where physically
We
you have to cut the film and
actually,
paste
yes,
it, right? And if
that's
one
right.
frame goes, it goes forever. Like you cannot
That's
do
right.
much. And to get a film edited, which is an award winning film, I think it's fantabulous. I mean, only you could have done it, really.
Thank you. Thank you so much. But it's all in the mind. The mind is so powerful, it can do anything.
Yeah. Mind over body. Absolutely.
Absolutely.
So when you were shooting for the movie Sitam with Smita Patilji and Nasiruddin Shaji in Pune, your daughter Gagi, who was also doing a role in the film, developed a terrible pain in her legs. Would you like to narrate the series of events that transpired thereafter?
Yeah, we didn't know what that pain was. We thought it must be stress because of her dancing. She was learning Bharatanatyam, and then we did some tests. And then at one point, the doctor said, it's not because the first X-ray didn't show anything. And then the doctor said, maybe a referred pain. Why don't you check it? We did some more X-rays, and then we found, and it also one more, and so on, and went up to right up to biopsy, and we found she had cancer,
Right.
a bone cancer in her leg. And that was a big shock for us because we didn't know what to do. Then we took her to Memorial Sloan Kettering Hospital
Right.
in New York and stayed there and got the surgery done. And then it was a series of chemotherapies and so on. That was a long haul. It was a very difficult time for us. But unfortunately, at that time, also what happened was I didn't realize it, but my marriage was also on the line, so to say,
Right.
because my ex-husband, now ex-husband, and my friend got involved. And 1 year later, my daughter just passed away. We couldn't do anything, we couldn't save her. And the very next morning, my husband woke me up and said, I want a divorce. And I couldn't believe it. Was like, it's not real, it can't be happening. But he just held me and said, look, I'm saying something to you. I want a divorce. And it was like the ground beneath me was no ground anymore. And I was devastated. I was miserable. We had a young son.
Right.
And I didn't know what to do. I even tried to end my life because so disturbed, so depressed. Then I said, I have to do something. I've got this little boy I have to be responsible for. So I went to a psychiatrist friend. Even in that state of mind, I don't know how I got this idea of going to my psychiatrist friend. And I said, I can't live, I can't die. What shall I do? And he said, don't worry, everything will work out. And it worked out. And I made myself heal. And, and initially I said no to the divorce.
Right.
And then I said yes. And then I took my little son and set up a home and made a film and did lots of things.
But I mean, I love the way you say it today, but I'm sure in those days, like each day and each hour and each minute would have been terrible for you.
It was so painful I cannot even describe. You know, it was like every day was so hard to get through. 24 hours for like 24 years,
Yeah.
maybe. I don't know. It was the hardest thing. It was very, very difficult. But, you know, it's possible. Human beings are resilient, and it's possible.
So initially, when you got to know this, and you realized that, not just my daughter, but my husband and my friend, I've lost everything in within a span of just 24 hours. What was your initial reaction?
I mean, it was just didn't want to live, didn't want to face life at all. It was end of the road. Otherwise, I wouldn't even taken such a stupid, drastic decision to end my life, you
Right.
know. And I failed, so it was good in a way. This was another failure.
That
That was
was
a good failure.
that was
Like
a
the
good failure,
yes,
absolutely. That was a good failure. So what did you finally tell yourself? And every we have the self-talk that we do internally, right, which the
yes.
others don't hear. So what did you finally tell yourself, which allowed you, which gave you the permission to move on?
Yeah, I started work right away. In fact,
Okay.
I thought, you know, because we were a team and he was a man, he would get more work and I wouldn't get any work, but I was good in what I did. So I
Right.
began to get work. So that was one good thing. Secondly, my heart opened up to people and, you know, I started listening to people's stories and I started realizing they're much worse off. I said, God, you've given me so much and I'm so blessed. I've got my talent, I've got my work and I can do it. And there were many people who were not talented, who were not trained, who were, so many of them also illiterate, and some of them very educated but helpless. So I said, I've got so much, I must make a life, you know. It's like, and that became like very inspiring for other people because when I
Absolutely.
stood up for myself, without realizing, I began to become a role
Role
model.
model, leading by example. So when I believe you did everything with Vikas ji in your early film career, right? And stayed out of college because that's where you guys met. So after that, when you tried to work alone, being a woman technician in a male dominated industry, what was it like, or what kind of challenges did you have because you were a single woman?
You know, they were luckily the one part was not so bad because, you know, even as a partner when we're working together, I used to do a lot of work because initially people thought, oh, dekho ladki hai, kya karegi, and that kind of
Right.
thing. And anyway, you know, on a set, men don't like to, or anywhere, I suppose, men don't like to take orders from women. But I had to prove myself right through. And if we casted X, I had to do 100 times X to show that I knew my job, and you
Right.
know. So technically and work-wise, I was. But the other problem I had was something very different, and that was unwanted attention.
Hmm.
Because when you're
Hmm.
single, when you're alone, people try to take advantage, and that was a very difficult time for me.
Yeah.
All that unwanted attention from all kinds of people. I mean, there were people who were supposed to be friends, there were people who were colleagues, there were people from the industry. Everybody wants a piece of that. You know, it was like horrible.
Right. So, do you believe that casting couch exists? And, what's your view on the Me Too movement?
Oh yes, casting couch very much exists. Though a lot of people say, oh, aisa kuch hai hi nahi. No, casting couch is very much there. Earlier it was for girls, but now it's also for the boys for
Right.
quite some time now. And I'm glad the Me Too movement is happening because in my time we could not speak up. Because if you did speak up, it was you were shamed. And there was no question of speaking up. And I went through a lot of situations I learned to handle on my own. And you know, in 50 years, I could have done many more films, but
Right.
obviously I didn't do because I didn't want a godfather, and I didn't want all these kind of liaisons and all that. You know, those kind of friendships.
Right.
I don't want
Right.
all that. I wanted to work and I wanted to make my films.
Right.
And I only did what made sense, you know, and what was workable. So I'm glad the women are speaking up now and they found a voice. And now they don't have to wait 20 years to speak up. Now they
Right.
can speak up right away. But it's high time this was addressed because it's very, very rampant. And people will say, why are you pointing out the industry? It's also in corporates, it's also in politics, it's everywhere. Yes, it is everywhere. But I think it's time that women got a little more respect.
Yeah.
Not just a little more, but lots of
Lots
respect
of
actually.
respect. So, your first major feature film that you did after your separation was Rihai. And I believe Smita Patil ji was originally going to star in that film, but eventually the role was done by Hema Malini ji, the then dream girl. What were the challenges you had to overcome in the making of this film?
The challenges were very different, you know. I mean, once actually I thought I wouldn't even make the film after Smita died. And then a lot of people said I had taken a loan from NFDC and
Right.
it was been sanctioned.
Right.
And everybody said, look, it'll just run out and you might as well make the film. Why are you not getting up and just doing it? And I said, who will I cast? What will I do? All this confusion to start with. And then, of course, we finally decided on Hemaji and she agreed, and that was good. And we went to this so-called God-forsaken village. Turned out to be Mr. Modi's village, Vadnagar. And there we were. And the situation was exactly like in the film because, it was a lot of women in the film.
Right.
It was about repressed sexuality.
Right.
10 days into the film, one of my women actors asked me, there are no interesting men here. What are we supposed to do? Your cameraman is so benign. He only looks to the camera. He doesn't even do anything with us. And you keep all the male assistants. They were all busy. So there are no men. What are we supposed to do? And I said to myself, oh my God, am I supposed to do something more with this?
Right.
Like, because normally in an outdoor, what happens is the men go out and they know where to find cigarettes, they know where to
Correct.
find liquor, where to find women, and so on.
And
But
this was
never
a dry
thought-
state as well, right? To begin
Yes,
with.
it was a
Yeah.
dry state. And now the woman was actually asking me this.
Wow.
So I realized that the film I was making was real, made sense.
Wow, amazing. And I believe Smita Patil ji and you share your birthday, and you also were very close friends. And in her life, she has been, if you really look at it, the other side of the coin, as they say.
That's right. That's right. In fact, the time that we were going through, it was so similar. She was the other woman in somebody else's life, and I was the wife, the abandoned wife.
Right.
And we were so close together, and we could understand each other's world. And in fact, her mom, Smita's mother, used to say to me, Kasaga, how can you tolerate Smita, what she's doing and all? I said, Ma, but it's not so simple. Sometimes you cannot help these things. I mean,
Right.
things get out of control. Sometimes you can't help it because human beings are human beings in the
Right.
end. And the unexpected things happen and people get involved.
Yeah.
And then you have to find your way out of wherever you are.
And I think everyone is suffering in this case, right? The woman is suffering, the other woman is suffering, and it's very easy to say that the other woman's in the wrong, but I think women are suffering in both sides, right?
Both the women were suffering. In our case, both of us were suffering. And to make things worse, the children also suffer.
Absolutely.
We never think of that. The children suffer.
Yeah, they do. Arunaji, after you made the film Patita Pavana, showcasing the life of Devdasis who were eventually forced to become sex workers in Kamathipura,
Yeah.
right? There was a lot of hue and cry about who's going to watch this film. There was...
Yeah, some people had this thing about, अरे in Rando का film कौन देखेगा? And that made me so angry. In Rando को बनाया किसने? I said, guys, how can you talk like that?
Yeah.
And it's just like so unfair to say in Rando ka film. I mean, because that's exactly what people do. Take advantage.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all right if a woman chooses to sell her body. I'm selling my talent, I'm selling my mind, whatever it is.
Correct.
If somebody's selling their body, I don't have an issue. But these women are exploited.
Right.
They're exploited
By the
by
pimps.
everyone down
Yes.
the line. And the girls, when I made the film, in that place where they were initiated and married off to the goddess, they were little girls. They didn't even know what's beneath their skirts.
Correct.
I mean, forget about being sexuality and all that. They have no idea. And then they're bought and sold down the line many times over, finally ending up in Kamatipura, where they're like zombies. I mean, that's not acceptable. That kind of trafficking, that kind of exploitation is just not on. But as I said, if somebody chooses
Right.
to do this as a profession, why not? I mean, it's their business.
So do you think legalizing commercial sex would have been a good movement? Because there were talks about it at that time, but somehow
Yes.
it never went through.
That's right. It would be a good thing because then they would not be exploited as much.
Right.
And they'd have equal rights like you and me
Right.
to do whatever they wanted.
Right.
And it's present in many European countries, and I think it would work well here too.
And I think it also kind of works for the floating population that comes in and out of metros. And I don't know how much of it, would you agree, relates to the fact that it makes the city safer for the women who...
Definitely, I think so, because here's a pocket, but unfortunately they're exploited. That's the only part. But otherwise, there's a lot of people who, workers and floating population, as you said, they come to cities and they don't know what to do. Earlier, they had the red light area and the
Correct.
single
Dance
screen
bars.
cinemas.
Yeah.
Later on, the
Dance
dance bars.
bars.
But when dance bars shut down, people didn't know what to do with themselves at night.
Right.
And also, when the single screens gave way to multiplexes, now where do these labor class go? They go, and now of course they have these little things in these chopatpattis, little
Right.
video bars, and then they watch all these porn, and makes it worse. They're
Right.
not watching a typical Hindi film
Right.
in the big screen was much better than watching porn in a small little hole in a
Correct.
shanty.
Correct.
So that's what it's cost socially.
Right. So, Arunaji, as a filmmaker, you also made a lot of national award-winning documentaries, and you were the first lady landmark forum leader for India, amongst the first 50 odd across the globe, right? Women
Yes.
leaders. And recently, you directed a film for Priyanka Chopra Films called Firebrand, which of course has been bought by Netflix to be released. We don't know when, but quite soon,
Very
right?
soon.
Very
Yeah,
soon,
very
right?
soon.
So, what's next for Aruna Raje?
Well, I'm looking at doing another film for
Okay.
sure. And before I made Firebrand, I had also started a novel.
Oh, okay.
And I'm planning to also work on that and complete it.
It's a fiction.
Yes,
Oh,
fiction for a
lovely.
change.
Oh, lovely. Very
But that's again looking at the underbelly, it's like what drives people, what makes human beings human.
right.
And this whole equation and this whole taboo about sex, I mean, we might as well face it. I mean,
Right.
and it's very unfortunate they've taken sex education off the school curriculum, but it's very important.
Important, definitely.
Very important because people must know, children must know as they're growing up, before the hormones start raging, they must
Right.
know what they're dealing with.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, what's the one advice you'd like to give to a filmmaker today? Because given the fact that you have almost 50 years of experience in the industry, like
Yeah, more than
more
now,
than
50.
that. Okay, cool. I didn't want to reveal your age, but
No, that's all right. You see, you're as young as you think you are. It's fine. I mean, it's just a number.
it's just the number. That's true. So, at the age of young 27, with more than 50 years of experience that you have, what's your advice you'd like to give to a filmmaker, especially the ones who are caught between the subject they'd like to work on, vis-a-vis the box office success, which usually a producer would demand? Like, what's your view or what's your advice for them?
Well, I've been through those bad times when everybody wanted everything so-called commercial. Gana hai, naach hai, ye hai, cabaret hai, rape hai, ye hai. There's a lot
Right.
list of things. In fact, even in Rihai, my distributor was after me. Usko ek scene mein to pant pehna do aur Hema Malini ji ke saath dream sequence karo. And I said, no, he will wear a dhoti and that's what he's going to be because that's how my hero is in the film.
Right.
But today it's possible to make films with the subjects you like, but if you make it well, it will go well. And there are very many examples today of films which are not so-called commercial formula,
Right.
and they've done very well commercially. So I would say be true to your story, be true to yourself, and make it well, because people will buy it. Because today there's so much exposure to world cinema, thanks to the
Right.
media and all that people, even the Indian public, is now appreciating other kind of movies, not just the typical song dance affair.
Yes. I think the audiences have matured as well to real cinema.
Absolutely.
Maybe, do you think the fact that we have so many international channels come in now, that's played a role? Because, they're seeing a lot more of
That's right.
reality
And
cinema.
also on the net, they can actually access any film.
Right.
And they have so much exposure. And I think there's a younger audience and a more open audience and more film literate audience.
Right. Awesome. So, thank you so much for talking with me on that. And now we have this really, really special round, which every talk show has, and that's the rapid fire, but we call it Gone in 10 Seconds. So, we're just going to go with a few questions and you will have 10 seconds to answer them.
All right.
Okay? All right. So, if you could relive your life, would you change any decisions you made?
No.
Okay. What one piece of advice would you give to your younger self?
Celebrate life.
Okay. If you could live the life of any movie character, who would you choose?
I don't know.
Okay. Which movie best describes your journey?
Difficult to say because I don't think that film has been made yet.
So, do you plan to do a biopic?
No, someone else has to do it. I can't do it.
Okay, but you could direct your own biopic or maybe edit it. Does that inspire you?
I don't think so.
Okay.
I think one has to be very objective and let someone else do the job if I want to do it.
Okay. So, do you have, if there was a biopic to be made, who would you like to direct it?
That's a difficult question. That's a very difficult question.
I just pulled it off the air, you know. It
Yeah.
wasn't planned. It's
I
not in
know,
my
but
cue card.
I know, but it doesn't matter. But it's very hard to say because I know someone who understands a woman well.
Right.
You know, I don't know.
So you wanna think that one and put us in the comments in live later. Yeah?
Yes, maybe yes.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. What are the essential ingredients to good filmmaking?
Well, be true to your story and know your craft.
Right.
Definitely know your craft. There are no shortcuts. You will be caught out.
What keeps you inspired?
I think love.
Best advice you've ever received?
Work is worship from my father.
Oh, lovely. Is it more important to do what you love or love what you're doing?
Well, it's nice to do what you love, but most of the time you're doing, whatever you're doing. And if you can find a way to love what you're doing, I think you will be happy.
Awesome. What is the greatest lesson you've learned?
Humility, compassion.
How important it is to keep growing oneself?
Most important. There is sky is not the limit, sky is really not the limit. I can grow and grow and grow and grow and grow. And I think it's very important. Gandhiji said about if you want change, be the change. And I think that's all. You want to create a world that works.
Right.
I think be the change.
Awesome. What are the top 5 priorities in your life today?
I think people, I love people. I love my work. And 5 priorities. Well, I have to look after my health.
Okay.
And not in any particular order, but sure, my family is very important to me.
Yeah.
That could be earlier, maybe. And as I said, did I say work?
Yes, you did. Yeah.
Work, family, people, and
Health,
health,
and one more.
and celebrating life and people actually celebrating with people. I think
Lovely.
so. Because if you don't enjoy, I mean, you can't just go through life like sad and happy and like I don't know what.
Right. What is the greatest lesson you've learned?
Love conquers all.
Do you think a person needs to first overcome setbacks and challenges to be really successful in life?
There's no first. You have to be simultaneous because, you can't say, I'll fix myself first and then I'll become successful. So every day is a challenge and you have to work at, making life work for you as well as, doing what you really love or believe or what you've taken on, like being responsible for it. And that will suddenly you find you're successful because there's no way of just wanting to be successful and trying to get there. There is no such pathway. Every day you do your best and you do perform. And I think you'll suddenly find one day you're already successful.
Awesome. Do you think, okay, if you found a way to time travel, where would you go?
I don't know. I think in my fantasies.
Yeah. Okay.
Because I love to dream and daydream.
I think you did that as a child as well, isn't it?
Yes.
Perched on top of a tree, reading with 2 books on your side, and just
Yes, that's right. You read my book. And for me, I think what's very important is freedom. If you
Right.
have freedom, you have everything.
Yes.
And I think that's one of the things I began to realize that freedom, freedom not to run around and do what you want, like go crazy, but freedom from your own shackles, from your own thinking, from your own traps, from your own cage, and come out and be like who you really want to be.
Right. One thing you wish you could change about you?
I think God did an okay job. Why should I change anything?
That's a good one. Okay. An idea that changed your life.
Believe in yourself.
Okay. Your life in 3 words.
Live life fully.
Okay. If you had only 24 hours to live, what would you do?
I would have another Thanksgiving party. I love to do that every year. Every
Oh,
birthday, I have a Thanksgiving party and I invite all my friends and say, thank you so much for being in my life.
how sweet.
And I probably have another Thanksgiving party.
How lovely. Okay, since we're in the era of hashtags, okay, what hashtag would you like your tombstone to have? Your tombstone, what hashtag should it carry?
I say, love all people.
Okay, love all people. All right, we'll include it here as well. So thank you so much,
Thank
Arunaji,
you.
for talking to me. And last but not the least, I'd like to ask you one last question. What advice would you like to give to a woman who found out that her husband has stepped out of the marriage?
I would say, let him go. Something better might be waiting for you. Just let him go.
And how do you propose that a person would go ahead with the transformation?
Well, I mean, the thing is, life means change. Nothing is permanent. You have to accept change. And it's no point hanging on to someone who doesn't even want you. The thing is to let him go. And you have a life of your own
Right.
and create that life, the life you want to create.
Awesome.
And, you can work your way through it for sure. I did, and I know many people have done it, and everybody can do it.
Right. Awesome. Thank you so much, Aruna ji, for being with us today. And just a little last word to the audience. I'd like to say that Aruna Rajaji has been his life has been full of traumas, but she has stood by herself, and the reason she's been able to do that is because she's been continuously pursuing to self-discover herself, educate herself, work on herself, find her inner strength and self-worth. And despite having tragedies after tragedies that could have been debilitating for most people, she has overcome them. Despite the loss and despite the heartache that they must have caused her, I'm sure this episode will inspire and give you all the gift of hope, not just to the people who are watching, but I'm hoping that a lot of people will be sharing this video and you guys will be inspiring millions of people across the globe. So thank you so much for watching India's Biggest Comebacks, episode number 6. And we'll be back soon with another episode. So stay tuned.